welcome back to Arrakis Central, your all-in-one Dune source. Please remember to like and subscribe if you enjoy this content. So I'm going to do a reaction here. I have not watched this next episode of Dune Direct, episode 3, which came out yesterday, I believe. I haven't had a chance to watch it yet. So I'm going to go ahead and play it, and we're going to react to it live right now. Even though they did live stream it, I didn't get a chance to watch it. So we're going to go ahead and jump right into this. We'll see, this is post Gamescom, so we'll see what they're going to say about what information. Now, I'm wondering when this was actually filmed. So is it going to just be some of the same information from Gamescom, or is it going to be new stuff we haven't seen since Gamescom? So we'll find out. We'll go ahead and kick off the vid. I might stop it periodically to talk. Our nice standard Dune intro. Hopefully the audio doesn't come out too washed out. Let's see what they're going to tell us here in this vid.
Hello and herzlich willkommen to Gamescom. I'm Zoe Schwind, and you can see today you're not joining me on Arrakis, but the next best thing, which is of course our Dune Awakening booth here at Gamescom in beautiful Cologne, Germany. Now, it's been a very exciting week already with the gameplay reveal at opening night live, and of course all the streams showing the awesome presentations we had here on our show floor. Now, with all that new content come a lot of new questions, so I am lucky that I will have a few minutes with Joel Byles later today to hopefully answer some of those questions.
So they filmed.
But first things first, let me show you around.
So it looks like they filmed this at Gamescom. So this looks like something they made when they were during Gamescom. So interesting.
And now Joel and I are in front of the theater. This is where the presentations are happening. There will be people queuing right there. A timer will show them when the next one starts. We lucky ones, Joel, get to skip the queue. But once inside, what can people expect? What kind of presentations are those?
I mean, we'll be showing 30 minutes of gameplay and discussing and talking about what the game is, and yeah, giving people a real live performance of the game.
So there will be developers in there answering questions as well.
Yes.
All right, let's take a look at that. And this is it, the inside of the
Pretty cool display so far. So I saw some photos of this on their, so they actually had a big jumbotron in their screen. So this is pretty interesting to see.
theater. This is where 63 people can be seated to watch a presentation. What's going to be in this presentation?
So we're going to, start with the player's first steps, character creation.
There was a couple of clips we hadn't seen during their live gameplay. So we'll go back to that in a minute.
Of course, and then your first steps on Arrakis. Then we're going to show some building, going to show some world events that can occur, we're going to show the sandworm. We're going to end with going to a social hub and showing off one of the city areas of Arrakis, and we're going to show the spice hunt at the end of the game. That's kind of what's going to happen in the presentation.
Yeah, we saw that in the live play.
Afterwards, questions, and I kind of want this screen at home.
Honestly, same. Those sandworms look really impressive on a big screen, as we already knew, but
Yes.
It's fun to see it with the game involved as well. And for those of you who could make it to Gamescom, there is, of course, or was, of course, an opportunity to still catch all the action from this presentation from our streamer booth. We had streamers like Sacriel sitting down, showing the presentation, and chatting to their audience. Do you think we get in trouble if we push some buttons here?
I can probably push a couple. I'm also going to join a couple of the streams and hang out with the streamers.
Oh, sweet.
Talk a little bit about the game.
What's your game face? What's your...
Man, I'm not big enough to get in some of the live stream stuff on these. I don't know what I should be doing on this channel as far as gaming. I guess playing other games, but I don't really. I'm trying to keep it all Dune orientated, so it's kind of hard. So yeah, I didn't. I guess I could have flown over there on my own to go there, but yeah, I have a full life, so it would be hard to fly to Germany.
The streamer face.
Oh, I don't know.
Yeah,
I've never really. Maybe it's like this.
And at last, we're finding ourselves in probably the most exciting room of all, because in here,
Alienware.
a few lucky ones get...
That's funny. They showed the Lego Ornithopter. I've had that since last year. I've built. Pretty cool. Yeah, that's what we're gonna cover tomorrow night on the Dune live stream, my weekly. I'm gonna talk about some of the merch out there.
Amazing. There's so many people, but it's been fun talking to people who either know about Dune or don't know about Dune and introducing them to our game, seeing so many familiar faces and new faces, and it's just been an incredible experience so far.
This doesn't come around very often for me as a developer, but so far so good. It's been going really great. It's been great to sort of get connections with people, get in front of people, put the game in front of people ideally, and they can get...
Joel, thank you so much for taking the time to sit down with me for a quick chat.
Thank you for having me.
So before we're digging deeper into all the new things we've learned and seen about Dune Awakening, how does it feel for the first time to be able to show your game to the public?
I mean, it's really, really exciting. It's humbling to see what the public think. Like when you really get it in front of players, people who play the game. Like we've shown it to journalists and creators a few times, but this is really like the first look for people who, you know, just play games. You know, will they get into the gameplay? Will they like it? You know, are they seeing what we see, the promise of the game?
So you say the reaction of the players, have you just been creeping around the corners of the booth to watch them whilst they play?
You're watching people
Love
play,
that.
like, you know, I'm the guy who stands behind you and kind
There
of
will be a comment or two about that, I'm
coughs,
sure.
coughs every time you
It's gonna
you
play
do something
differently.
wrong. Yeah, exactly. It's left. Left.
You guys came not just, of course, with a game to showcase, but also a new tagline. It's Survive, Expand, Control. What's the tagline
That's
all
good.
about?
Survive, expand, control.
Expand, control. The phases that the player goes through on their journey in Dune Awakening. And we've kind of always had this, like we will always use this internally to explain the player journey. In the beginning of the game, the player is really learning the mechanics of survival, the harshness
Survive,
of Arrakis,
expand,
dealing with,
control.
you know, the
Pretty
heat,
interesting.
learning to find water, you know, avoiding that sandworm, and sort of making their way through the world. But then over time,
Yeah, that
they become more
sandworm's kind of...
settled.
I
They
wonder
start
why
to
they
build a base,
changed them up a little
they
bit.
start to expand outwards from their base.
From
They
the
build
movie.
vehicles. They go out into the world and explore. They expand their operations. They expand their bases. They make them larger. Maybe they move to a better
See,
part
that-
of the map that they prefer.
That footage right there was, I don't think was in the other gameplay footage. So that's pretty interesting.
And then eventually, once you've sort of seen what the world has to offer,
That
you
we've
start
seen.
vying for control over the spice.
The Harco
So you wanna
village.
start, you know, forming a guild, perhaps signing up with one of the factions, and of course,
They did not show
trying
Eric
to
Keen,
control
which
the
is
production of
interesting.
spice
I was
for
wondering
Arrakis.
why
So it's like
they
a
didn't
bit of
show
a
that.
checklist for the player, essentially. It's like
Exactly.
these
You know,
3 steps and then profit.
These 3 steps, 300 hours later, and you're the king of the world.
Easy. It's so simple. Starting at the beginning there with Survive. We've talked about survival on Arrakis plenty of times before. We, you know, covered worms, war, all the good stuff. We haven't really talked about the sun that much. Can you maybe elaborate on how people can withstand it? Like, what can you do against the sun on Arrakis?
Yeah.
Okay, so you're going to talk about some more survival in depth in the survival. We kind of know we need to drink water or you get heat stroke, right? So we're going to see what he says about that.
So, I mean, obviously, the most obvious thing is travel by night. And the second most obvious thing is stick to the shadows, right? So, obviously, the game has a full dynamic day-night cycle. And as the sun moves through the sky, the shadows change position in the world, and you want to try and stick to where they are and do your activities in the shade. Now, that isn't always possible, so you start to craft yourself gear like steel suits, which allow you to, you know, resist more heat, and of course preserve water. And you start to craft yourself
Nothing new here
like
yet.
steel tents, which allow you to like
Oh.
have portable shelter in the world.
So that's something we haven't seen yet. Well, we're able to use the still tent. Interesting. Is that like a little... I wonder how that's going to work. Do you get to look around inside the thing, or you just kind of cover up there and wait for a storm to go by or something? Weird. That's cool. That's the first time we're seeing that. Interesting.
Right, so those still suits and the still tents, is that something I can craft myself?
Yes, so especially later on in the game, you on part of the journey that you go on as a player is you go through these trials of Akul, which are kind of a Fremen ritual, and at the end of those rituals, you learn recipes that the Fremen have prepared for their own survival in the desert. And you,
What
as
the
a
heck is
player,
that? A
can then
vision?
start to
Spice
craft
vision?
Those items that you picked up, yeah.
Can I?
What is it? Some sort of spice vision you go to and go into like a trance or something? What that? We haven't seen this yet. That's new. Interesting.
For example, also build buildings and use their shade to hide behind? Does that work?
Yes.
Okay, 6.
Yes.
That's actually really cool.
It's actually kind of fun. It's also like sometimes you'll be out harvesting, right?
Yeah.
And there'll be a rock that's casting a shadow, and you'll be like, oh, I'm just going to crouch behind the rock.
Smart.
cool.
So use the environment
Yeah.
to your advantage, or create environment for your advantage.
And everything's
also.
kind of dynamic, so it's nice, yeah.
That's really, I mean, that's generally just so much joy because everything on Arrakis is so dynamic, like the sand, the movements, the imprints you leave whilst walking on that sand as well.
That stuff is interesting, and then there's like other layers to that where you can use like
Yeah, we've
certain
seen that.
devices to blow away the sand because you're looking for buried treasure. Things that
Oh.
get deposited by sandstorms, they leave treasure in their wake that you can actually, you know, find hidden beneath the sand. You need a scanner to find it, and then you can, you know, dig up the treasure. It's kind of cool.
Oh.
Just things like that that the technology allows us to do.
That's really cool. Such an interactive, open world to explore for all the players.
Oh, man.
Now another thing we got.
So that's cool. They're actually showing stuff they didn't show in the gameplay. So awesome. We're getting some different footage here of new other ways to play the game.
To see more of during Gamescom is building and the process. We talked about blueprints a little bit,
Here we go. And this is what I'm interested in, the building.
about the collaboration of building. I want to dig a little deeper into customization. How customizable are those buildings?
Well, I mean, so we have multiple different building sets, right? So the one that we've shown most of the time in these trailers is the Chone building set. Chone being kind of this organization that mass produces things in the world. And so you start with the basic building tiers, and then over time you can upgrade into more fancy versions which have different visuals. And you have things like, if you join the factions, you get access to the Atreides, you know, building set, the Harkonnen building sets, and these kind of allow you to visually customize how your base looks, right? And obviously Harkonnen is very H.R. Geiger, very dark, and the Atreides is more like fancy castle kind of stuff.
Can I mix and match?
Yes, you can combine those in any way you like to create some really weird hybrid combinations.
That can get very messy, can
Yeah.
it? Okay.
It can look very weird.
But hey, that's what customization is all about. You want people to be able to express themselves.
Exactly, expression and customization is one of our pillars. So express yourself however you like, even if it turns out that your Harkonnen Atreides hybrid is an abomination to mankind.
Another thing which has been coming up a lot more during what we've seen here at Gamescom is the presence of spice. So I want to talk a little bit more about that.
Talk about the spice,
we've
yeah.
seen, two different types.
So yeah, in that game's video footage, we saw that spice affects you. But what is it exactly? Just knocks you out, or what? I guess they're going to show us.
Types now, flower sand as well as spice. How do you harvest that? What's the difference between the two?
Yeah, so a part of the kind of mechanic of the game is drawing people out onto the sand where that sandworm is, making their lives a little more risky, a little more dangerous. Flower sand is this soft sand. It's mentioned in the book.
Oh, we saw this
where
before.
The Fremen like to pitch their tents because it's the softest place to sleep. It's kind of this very fine-grained sand you find on the most exotic of beaches.
Or Arrakis.
Yeah, or Arrakis in this case. It's very fine-grained sand, and in the game you need it as a resource for crafting. So you can go out there, you can harvest this flower sand by hand. It takes a little while to harvest a lot of flower sand that way. Or you can use this really cool tool we have called the static compactor. And when you fire the static compactor at the ground, it kind of takes all the sand and lumps it together in this big pile. For
Oh,
you to just
okay.
harvest straight away.
That's
that
cool.
sounds like something that makes noise though.
Yeah, it does, right? And when you make a lot of noise on the sand, you start to attract the sandworm.
Uh-oh. Yeah, we saw this earlier. Our doofy worm. For whatever reason, the worm in this particular section looked a little goofy. There he is.
So these are kind of the
Doop
mechanics you
doop.
use for harvesting flower sand. And then later
That
on,
particular
when you get to
angle, because I've
spice,
seen
it
different
works
angles
where
of
it
that
functions
worm and he
quite
looks
similar in
fine.
that
It's that one
the
particular
big spice
angle
balls
looked
leave
funny.
Giant spice fields on the sand, and you kind of harvest in the same way. You can harvest by hand, you can harvest with a static compactor, and of course, you want to bring, you know, to harvest the most, you want to bring a sand crawler, dump that on the surface, and use it to suck up as much spice as possible. And naturally, all of these things take place
Oh my
on
goodness.
the open sand, and the sandworm always comes.
Is there an effect from being around the spice for too long? While
Here we go. That's what I wanted to know about.
Am I inhaling the spice? What is happening to me?
Yeah, so just by virtue of being on Arrakis, you're inhaling a lot more spice than you probably would if you didn't live on Arrakis.
Factual, yeah.
And we see that in the films as well. Happens in the books. And so yeah, as a player, if you stand around on a spice blow too long without proper protection. You start to inhale too much spice and it gets into your bloodstream, and that can lead to, let's say, certain effects on your character in the world and in the game. Yeah, you know, the idea of these visions that Paul has, I think, is an interesting thing. We're definitely exploring this kind of idea in the game. What it is and what it means, I'll leave for the players and their imagination, and hopefully one day they'll find out.
Okay.
Noted.
So we're gonna have spice
now that I
visions.
harvested all that spice, though, what's the main usage for it?
Spice
other than
visions.
The personal use. Like, why am I out there harvesting and, you know, I mean, risking my
So we
life
should
for it?
get money
really?
from spice,
Sure.
right?
I mean, in
Solaris.
the Fremen use spice for everything. It's something that became a huge part of their culture. And in the same way, the player also starts to sort of find multiple uses for spice all the time. You need spice residue for fueling some of the generators.
Yeah, so I talked about this in some of my videos. Spice in the books is used for actually making like plastics and all kinds of other items that the Fremen use it for, ropes and all kinds of stuff. So it wasn't just for taking and eating. They use it for everything.
In the base, you start using spice to craft almost anything in the world. Like some of the higher tier gear in the game really requires spice as a key ingredient. Use it to pay your taxes to the Emperor, because otherwise
Wait, I have to pay taxes in this game too.
this is how we claim a sub thief.
Can't escape it, man.
Can't escape those taxes. I mean, you can. You don't have to pay them, and then you get killed by the Sardaukar and try
That's
to fight.
unlucky.
But
Yeah.
that's an option you
Mhm.
have.
Okay.
And then of
Wish I
course,
realized.
if you want to go into the Landsrad, spice is kind of the primary currency of the kind of political infighting that's happening between the major houses, and you can take a large role in that. And of course, you can sell it to make a lot of money.
So it's spice. It's everywhere.
Spice is the backbone of everything.
It really is. Another thing that we saw in regards to spice, or even like touched on in previous episodes, was abilities as well. Is there anything you can share about the connection between spice and abilities?
Yeah, so as the player's blood gets saturated with spice, you can imagine how abilities might be altered by being able to see just a little bit into the future. And so, you know, we have some of those effects in the game. I won't, again, spoil too much of it, but yeah, it
We're
will
gonna do
have
like
an impact on your
time
abilities.
jump
Fine,
view.
I'll take that. That was an answer. We'll take it.
It's an answer.
It is
I can't go too far down that path.
Well, speaking of abilities, though, it was really, really exciting to see some new abilities showcased here at Gamescom. Shield
Okay.
was one of them.
This
Can you maybe talk a
shield
little bit about
is cool.
Adding new abilities.
So that shield was one of the coolest things I thought. That's pretty neat. You can use it as as cover essentially, slow the guys down.
Your philosophy when it comes to creating abilities and make them work in your world.
Sure, we have, I mean, so first of all, we have our different archetypes, right? And we try to maintain our consistency with the lore of who those people should be. So if you are a mentat or a trooper, it's kind of like your basic set of abilities is kind of aligned around what that archetype would be using. So, you know, mentat, human computers, being able to see and calculate information really quickly in the world. But then from a gameplay and fun perspective, we're trying to build a game that has combat that is about getting in close for melee combat and then pulling back quickly to go back to range. So you're always switching your tactics based on the enemies you're fighting. If they're wearing shields,
Yeah, we've seen this
then you
footage
need to get
already.
in there and attack them with melee. Ranged attacks just won't do the trick, right? So it's kind of really about this push and pull. And so our ability design is really about giving players options, whether that is about getting you to them as quickly as possible, that is things like the dash ability, getting you in really fast, or using a
There you go.
Shigawa claw on the environment to pull yourself closer to the enemy, but also giving you abilities like the voice compel, which allows you to pull the enemy and compel them with the voice to walk to you so that they can be
I
struck
see.
down by your blade. So it's kind of about combining these things, and our ability design really takes this to heart. How do we get people in and out as
Now,
quickly
does
as
that work
possible?
on PvP?
So with the traversal abilities, I can really kind of pair that with items and tech, right?
Yeah, so I mean, of course, we have the suspensor belts, which basically at their lowest level allow you to fall without taking damage, but at their highest level allow you to fly basically freely, with you know, obviously power drains over time. But suspensor belts really allow you full mobility in the air.
I'm essentially the Baron at that point.
Yeah, exactly, right? Exactly.
The Baron.
And that's the fantasy. And then you can
Your
combine
fantasy
those.
is to be the Baron, so I
Oh,
need
you know,
to stop you
I've been
right
working
there.
on it for years.
Okay,
But no, so the ability to like use suspensor belts to fly around, right, and then combining it with a sugar wire claw, using the momentum of both of them to pull you through the world, you know, twice as fast as you could normally move, or you know, using the dash into a suspensor belt, which allows you to like really go quickly in the world. It's kind of crazy, and we might need to tone it down. But that sort of stuff is like, it's super interesting to see, and that's kind of what we mean by our combined arms. It's like playing around in the sandbox.
That's pretty
with
cool.
The way that the combat, the abilities, all these kind of things come together to just make combat feel
Sniper.
really dynamic and interesting.
There were a lot of interesting things, obviously, throughout the last few days.
I want
here
the
at Gamescom
range.
that were shown during, the opening ceremony, and
I'm curious what the range on Hunter Seekers are. How far can you send them? That'll be interesting to know.
also the things we see here on the booth. Also, we got to get more sneak peeks into like the player hubs. So we got to see a sneak peek of an allegiance ceremony, for example, but that's something that you shared in the past, that people do not have to align with one of the houses. That's still true, right? I do not have to get involved in any of that.
It is true. You as a player do not have to join one of these factions in the game. You're not forced to join them. You can play the game as a lone wolf or like with your little clan or guild of people who don't want to be part of the major faction, but you'll always kind of end up interacting with them in some way, right? The Harkonnen and the Atreides are fighting this war of assassins over the planet's surface, and in some way your contracts and the way that you work in the world, you're always going to encounter them in some form, but you don't have to join them. You don't have to be one of them. You can maintain your independence. You can help people who are participating in the Landsrad.
Yep, we saw some of that already.
Necessarily with either of those groups.
So you can play this game potentially completely solo or with like one or two other people, and you don't even ever have to join a guild or faction or anything. So that's because sometimes I just want to do solo stuff. Sometimes I want to join. I don't know. So I might have two different characters going in this game if you can eventually. I don't know how the character creation will work. Is it one per login account or what? But I might have two separate characters possibly.
Now, I mean, I do think it's a bit of a shame to miss out, because sometimes if you don't join, for example, the Atreides, you won't be able to get their best gear. You won't be able to get, all of the building set, for example, that the Atreides has, and you'll definitely miss out on their cool "awoo" battle cry.
He worked it in.
But
shout out to Discord.
Shout out to Discord. But it's completely up to you as a player, and you will be able to buy things like Atreides outfits that other players craft and put on the...
Oh, the blueprints. I can
like
still get my...
People can put things out for you to buy, yeah.
Okay, so the major drawback of not aligning with one of the houses would just be that I'm missing out on like specialized items in a way.
And I mean, I think some of the cooler political story stuff that we're putting into the game as well is like, it's interesting, but you don't have to do it. The main story is not tying you to one faction or another.
How locked in am I? Like, can I still play both sides in a way? Is there a drawback once I'm tying myself to Atreides? Then one day I wake up and I'm like, new day, new me. I don't want to be this anymore.
I'd like to go join the Baron.
Exactly.
Yeah, no.
What happens then? Can I leave?
I mean, yeah, of course, it's Dune, right?
So you can go back and forth.
People, and certainly
okay, that's
an option.
lovely.
So you can go back and forth, it looks like, between factions. I don't know.
So you can go down that way if you really want to get those rewards. Of course, you can betray your solemn oath to the Red Duke. You can do that. I don't think he'll look kindly on you after that point, but you definitely have the option.
I had my reasons, I'm sure, or will have my reasons rather. Okay, so there's benefits and advantages and a few drawbacks there, whether or not I want to align or get involved politically. Got it. Now, last but certainly not least, I think one of, if not the biggest announcement was, of course, a release window. Early 2025 is when players can get a hand on the game all over the world. But before that, will players get an opportunity to play more in the beta? Will there be a bigger beta, a more open beta? What's the spiel?
Yeah, absolutely. Like we're still doing our persistent beta that we started a few months ago. We're letting in more and more people over time, and we're going to start boosting it in a big way, adding lots of people to the beta in the coming months, so that we can really test
we can get in on this,
our scaling, and of course things like our end game systems, which we really need a lot of people to help us test out. So. Yeah, it's a great time. Hopefully people have already wishlisted the game and signed up on DuneAwakening.com, but if they haven't, still plenty of opportunities to get your hands on the game and make a decision about whether you like it or not before we launch it.
Absolutely. Well, Joel, thank you so much for taking the time. I'm going to release you back into the wild to look at what the players are playing outside right now.
Yeah, I'm going to go and be nervous and try not to tell people how to play my game.
You're doing great. And that's it from our very special episode of Dune Awakening here at Gamescom. As Joel just said, make sure to wishlist the game and, of course, follow us on social media for all the updates at Dune Awakening. And don't forget to also join our Discord server
Yep,
and join
already
the
part of that.
conversation. It's been so much fun to be here and have a look around. And of course, I want to thank you all so much for tuning in once again. Next time, we'll be back on Arrakis, so we hope to see you there.
Well, all right. So we did see some interesting stuff here. We saw a couple new gameplay mechanics that they didn't show previously, especially with there was the like right here we saw an area where it looked like there's a like a weird vision zone you'll go to. Yep, that's maybe if you take enough spice you can hallucinate and go to a different realm. It looks like that's interesting to see. And then earlier they showed, I don't know if when they're gonna show that tent again. Where was that at? So this part was interesting. You can use your tool to dig up buried treasure. That was another gameplay mechanic they showed here. I can't find that part, but there was a part where you actually have a still tent, a still tent where you can pitch the tent out, and then in case of bad weather or storm or whatnot. Yeah, so that was pretty interesting. And then of course they showed a little bit more about how you harvest the flower sand, which was pretty interesting. The building was pretty cool. It showed a couple more mechanics of that. Yeah, harvesting the flower sand for crafting. It was pretty interesting. We saw a little bit of that in the gameplay footage earlier in the week, but this they showed a little bit more of that, so that was pretty interesting. A couple cool little tidbits of area that we got on that. Nothing too crazy. They did mention you're going to be able to customize your base, mix and match pieces, move between factions, possibly in and out as you want. Play the game totally solo if you want. Spice will have effects on you. Hallucinogenic effects might give you, possibly they hinted at certain foresight powers you might be able to get. And then, but other than that, that was the big things. Everything else we saw earlier in the other Gamescom videos. So let me know what you guys think in the comments. It was just more, more the same. We didn't see anything too crazy new, but pretty much everything we saw during the gameplay footage from last week. And or is this something new? I think I got a couple more tidbits of information out of this video. So it wasn't super informative, but they keep hinting at that beta is going to expand. I haven't seen any traffic on that expanding yet on the Discord. Hopefully it's soon. Yeah, so yeah, I mean, I don't know if it'll be an open beta, but yeah, we'll see what happens and when they'll actually lift that NDA and let people start talking about stuff. And I'm hoping they'll have an open beta that we can live stream, period. So basically I can start streaming some of that footage. Hopefully that's what they do. But until then, let me know what you think in the comments, and I will see you later.